dying. And he kissed her hand 3 times and said, I love you. And I got there maybe minutes later. So I wanted to make sure that my father had a chance. And I called up the doctor and he sent an ambulance. He said, Judy, he's gone. I said, no, he's not gone. And they took him and they tried artificial respiration on him with the machinery, and 20 minutes, and it was still, obviously, my father had passed. And so the doctor let me stay in the room alone with him. This is what I started. I said, Dad, I couldn't tell you this before, but I want you just to notice that you're going through a dark tunnel. Don't look to the left. Don't look to the right, because there may be shapes and forms that are tempting and they may be fearsome. Just look straight ahead for the light. Don't look at anything but the light, Dad. And all of a sudden, I heard his voice so loud and clear in my right ear. And he said, will you stop this foolishness? I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm there already. Get to work and get rid of my car, get rid of my body, The devastation sort of was tempered by, and he wasn't being humorous. He was being just what he was, Come on, don't be ridiculous. I don't want to hear that poppycock. I know what to do. So I still
What do you think? I'll learn nothing?
I still felt very incomplete because I never had the conversation with him, the kind we're having. It took me quite a while to say, that's okay. He was the perfect him. And with him, I was the perfect me that I was supposed to be. And I don't need to teach anyone anything at all. All I need to do, forgive myself for the illusion and love them over and over again. Forgive myself for making up this world. It's a dream, so I don't have to feel guilty, and just love him. So
that's already actually quite a good opening, Judy. Welcome, Judy Whitson.
Thank you so much, Norman. I'm glad to visit Germany today.
Oh, yeah, you are. You are in my office here in the city most southwest in Germany, close to Basel, Weil am Rhein. Welcome to Awaken to Love, a global celebration of A Course in Miracles. We're really so glad having you, Judy. Really, it's beautiful.
I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, and I'm so excited what, the things you have to tell, maybe from the past a little bit, some nice stories of the history, of also the scribing and the editing and all this, especially the people, of the history, the past of the course, and whatever else comes to your mind, I think you're quite rich in experience and in people, knowing people, aren't you?
Well, I'm old enough, put it that way. When you live a long time, and I'm about to be 88, so when you live a long time, as my mother used to say, when you live long enough, you live long enough. And I think that she was absolutely right in insinuating that when you're able to have many years, as we call them in this earth time, you have exposure and experience to some wonderful, wonderful opportunities. Some of them we'll call learning opportunities, in which case they don't feel so wonderful until you see them in the past and realize it was absolutely necessary. And some of them are really exciting. So yeah, I'm intensely grateful that I have had the opportunity to meet, particularly in the arena in which we're discussing A Course in Miracles, the principles, and to work with them in the early days, and thank goodness to photograph them, because otherwise we wouldn't have any, and just to learn from them more than anything else. I was their student, and still my teachers, still. I do notice this, Armin, and you can, of course, stop me anytime you want, that many people do ask me, how did I get involved in this? Because it seems such a strange choice to me. I guess one would ask oneself the same question, no matter what it is you do, and all of a sudden you find yourself in very deep waters, but you know that you're not going to drown. You know, how did this happen to me?
And how old were you?
Well, I was just 44 years old, and this was 1975. And at the time, I was teaching courses in experimental parapsychology at New York University, which is where I lived in New York City. I guess I could say, looking back at it, I had it all. I had a great family. We had very good relationships. I had a gorgeous place to live, a good job, good friends. I mean, what more was there? Everyone around me that I really cared deeply for, and exciting new experiences. No financial worries, which was a big one. I had had them before. Good health. But I can tell you, I was really miserable. I don't know how to explain it except just say pure misery. I felt as if I was going down a vortex and I was being sucked into something I didn't know what. And one night, I just locked myself into my bathroom in my home, and I just started to cry. I should say, looking back from a vantage point of time now, I realized I was suffering from a disease. And that disease seems to be endemic in this world. I was lucky enough through Helen and Bill, scribes of the course, to meet Mother Teresa. And she asked me a little bit about my background because she was interested. She knew I knew all about her. And when I told her this part, how I felt as if I was being sucked into a black morass, that's the word she used, spiritual deprivation. I was spiritually deprived. I really felt sick at heart and with no reason. So the one night I checked myself into my bathroom and just cried and cried and cried. When I was finished with the sobbing and I was so worn out I could hardly even speak, I heard myself praying, won't someone up there please help me? Won't someone up there please help me? Won't someone up there please, please help me? A Course in Miracles tells us that prayer is the medium of miracles. And could absolutely believe that mine was answered. About 4 days after this intense surrender, I guess that's what it was, a surrender, I was at a conference that I had put together for the purpose of investigating Kirlian photography, which back then was of interest both to the Russians and to people in this country. And I was giving the welcoming address, and we were thinking that maybe this diagnostic tool could be helpful in healing process. Maybe it could even show the human aura, which, by the way, no, it didn't. But we thought at the time maybe. And so it wasn't too surprising that I got onto the field in my address of healing. And then I heard myself saying something, hey, that sounded really good. I wonder where that came from. It was spontaneous, but it was more beautiful in the way I spoke. And then I forgot about it. It turned out that Bill Thetford, Helen's associate and scribe of A Course in Miracles, was in the audience. And he and Helen had already completed taking down the manuscript called A Course in Miracles, 1,500 pages of it in 7 black thesis binders, locked in their secret closet in their office so no one could see it. And he heard me quoting something from the teacher's manual about healing. And he knew absolutely that they had been asking what Helen called the voice for guidance on what to do with the manuscript because they didn't want to do anything with it at all. She particularly didn't want it to be seen. But he felt it was really for the world, not just for the two of them. And they asked and they got, yes, it was to be shared with the world. And then, of course, they asked some more and they found out that it was to be published. And then they asked some more and they found out that a woman was coming along to take it on its way. And then they asked when, and the answer that Helen got and wrote down, which of course I did see later, was when she asked, when is the woman coming to take it on its way? The answer was she is not yet ready for her spiritual education, but will be soon.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know what soon means in the Holy Spirit's time, but it certainly was soon in the time of the world, because I got a message that two people, professors from Columbia University, wanted to see me, and I didn't know what about, of course, but that was a good place to go, because isn't that a place of healing? In fact, over the door on the building in which they worked on 165th Street in Manhattan, through which all of those people in the hospital and Columbia University Medical Center pass, it says, "Of the Most High cometh healing."
Oh,
So,
really?
of the Most High cometh healing. Yeah, I'll send you that photograph. But it didn't seem to me, as I said, so strange to hear from two professors of psychology at Columbia, because I was another peer in the university, New York University, not theirs. And I had done speaking and television and had talked about healing, and maybe there was something that they had to tell me or ask, I didn't know. So I certainly accepted that invitation and went there with a friend of mine, Douglas Dean, who was from the Newark College of Engineering and was involved with me in healing research. And we went there for lunch. And the strange thing was the day was kind of drizzly, not heavy rain, but I couldn't park the car as close as I would like. And so we were running through the streets so as not to be late to meet them in the teachers' cafeteria, the faculty lounge, as they called it. And I had never seen them, of course. And as I ran towards the steps to approach the building, there were lots of folk coming in and out because it was crowded. It was noontime. And I suddenly grabbed Douglas's arm and I said, "There he is. He's waiting outside for us. I thought we're meeting him inside." And Douglas, who actually had met Bill, I had not, said, "Yeah, he is, but wait a second, Judy, you've never met him." And that was very true. I recognized him the instant I saw him. Now, when things are happening so quickly like that, you don't stop and speculate. You just receive the information.
Yeah.
And so we, joined him. He took us to the lounge where I met Helen and saw a very small woman with streaked blonde hair who was extremely groomed and very bright blue eyes behind thick glasses. And she spoke with a very crisp manner, and I was instantly intimidated.
Who wouldn't have been? Who wouldn't have been?
Well, I didn't have the course then. So, and we spoke for a while, and I wondered, what am I doing here? We don't seem to have anything in common. They certainly haven't asked me any questions. They haven't volunteered anything that would be like a lifeline to throw to me so I could have conversation with them. And as I was wondering this, I just looked at her. I can't say I felt about her the same way I felt about Bill. With Bill, it was instant recognition in my heart center. With Helen, it was, I should be here now. It was more like that. And I said to her, my mouth said to her, my mind wasn't thinking it. "So you're hearing an inner voice, are you?" And Bill started to laugh and she got pale. He just thought the whole thing was so funny. And he said, "Since we're finished with our dessert, let's take Judy upstairs to our office and talk to her." And so we trotted to their office where they ushered me in. I sat down at their desk and they locked the door and pulled down the shade. This is how hidden this was. And they proceeded to tell me their story of how A Course in Miracles came to them. And I was not the least bit amazed or surprised. My field of study and teaching being experimental parapsychology, I was familiar with many different books that had been what we call channeled. I'd received other manuscripts in the mail to see whether our foundation, we had a very small not-for-profit at the time, would be interested in finding a publisher. I also had the experience of my then husband, Bob Skutch, who, without any prompting whatsoever, one day started to write a healing course for himself through automatic writing or channeling.
Mm-hmm.
So this was not a bizarre circumstance for me. It was comfortable, familiar. The bizarre circumstance was for them. They were still overwhelmed by the experience and also talking to someone about it. But they did tell me their whole story. And I thought to myself, whatever they've done, this must be quite remarkable. And I asked, may I see it? And Helen was a bit hesitant, but Bill said, you know she's going to see it anyway. So he took a key out and opened up the filing cabinet and took out these 7 big black thesis binders, the kind their students used to put in their PhD thesis. And they put them on Bill put them on my lap. They were very heavy. And I opened the cover of the first one. Well, all I saw, since it was typed by hand, this was not in printing. It was just a very rough typing. I just looked at the introduction. And so what I got was, this is a course in miracles. It is a required course. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean that you can establish the curriculum. It means only that you can elect what you want to take at a given time. I went on to read to myself, but it felt as if there was another voice coming through. It just felt larger than myself. That's all I can say. And I went on and I read, the course does not aim at teaching the meaning of love, for that is beyond what can be taught. It does aim, however, at removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence, which is your natural inheritance. The opposite of love is fear, but what is all-encompassing can have no opposite. This course can therefore be summed up very simply in this way. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. And all I can say is I knew my prayers of a few days ago had been answered. I didn't know what this document was, and I didn't know what I'd have to do with it. But I knew that I had asked a question, and I knew I had an answer lying on my lap. And I also felt inside my inner or higher self saying to me, this is your map home. Now that resonated a lot because when I was a very little girl of 3, I fell out a window. It wasn't very high. It was a first floor window, but I fell onto cement and it seemed to go in slow motion as I fell. And I remember so clearly crying in my mind, I want to go home. 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 And when my parents picked me up, I was screaming, I want to go home, on and on. And they kept saying to me, you're home, you're home. They took me in the house. They kept saying, you're home. And I kept saying, I want to go home. And what I meant as a child is this is not safe. Where I am now, this place is not safe. I want to go home. And years later, 41 years later to be exact, I was holding 1,500 typewritten pages in big black binders on my lap and hearing, here is your map home.
And you know, Judy, I've heard this or I've read this introduction so many times. And now that you repeated it for us, for me, for us, I felt the same voice again, the same authority in a very good sense again. And I just love that piece, that part of the course. And yeah, I'm so grateful you did this, you know, or I mean, you did your part. I mean, you didn't do all, obviously, and we were all led to it, I think, just like you were. And yeah, so I have immense gratitude for you and Well, ultimately for him who dictated it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Owen. That's where the gratitude lies. We each have our own small part. And as we're reminded often enough, comparison is of the ego. All our parts are equal. Every single thing that anyone does, and doesn't even have to be course related, but spirit related, uh, helps us remember who we are and awaken. And when I haven't said this out loud recently, the introduction to the course, and I just felt like it was starting to come through, whether I was going to say it or not, I didn't know, but I just was sort of hearing it again and feeling something that you did perhaps, particularly in the last two lines, bringing it back to the experience I had of falling out a window when I was a child. Nothing real can be threatened, and nothing unreal exists. So in a way, that was my prayer as a child too. Do we or do we not, I'm wondering, all come in with that same feeling of, I want to go home. I want to go home. When everyone saw the movie E.T., almost everyone I spoke to about it cried. Where did you cry? The part when E.T. wanted to go home.
Yeah.
And metaphorically speaking, isn't that what we're all trying to do? And the going home, as the Course tells us, is a very easy step because we've never left. I think that's probably the most comforting thing that I hang on to in the Course. We've never left. This is the dream. And we certainly have familiarity with dream states. This is the dream. When you open your eyes, you're home. When you awaken, considerably awaken, you're where you always were.
I also find it really remarkable that, I mean, he sums up a work, an obra of 1,500 pages, and you said it was very heavy on your lap. He opens it and says, in two lines, it can be summed up. And in this line, the first line, he uses the word threatened.
Yes.
You would never guess that in a spiritual document you would use the word threat. I think that's amazing. And he, using that word, he puts the finger right on the button. I think it's amazing how he transports this wisdom to us through language. I think that's just amazing.
I find as many times, and it's every day for me, as I read the Course, the power of the words in themselves is mystical. The choice of the words in English, which is why Helen had always said to us, the Course can't be translated. Well, we had to wait until she died, and the volume of people asking us for translations was so pressing. Not only that, there were people who would translate it themselves because they wanted it in his or her own native language.
Of course.
And when people do get involved in not only the study of the Course, but wanting to translate it into a form that would suit from their birthplace and the people that they grew up with and the people that they're connected to in their own countries, it takes years and years to do the job. I would say well, although quite a few of the translators have already revised their first editions because they thought it wasn't good enough. It's very hard to translate, but that's the words, not the spirit. The spirit has absolutely no language whatsoever. It speaks directly to the center. So when something can do both, I can't imagine, at least in my life, I can't imagine what else would do it for me. I wonder sometimes whether we can ever do it justice, this tremendous job that Helen did, coming from a woman who said often enough, I said I would take it down. I never said I would practice it. Her agreement was that she would take it down, and no matter what anyone said, don't you want to feel better about your relationships? Don't you want to feel more at peace? No. What a wonderful example. You know?
I remember that internal conversation she had with Jesus, asking him, why did it have to be me? Why did I have to write it down? I mean, it was 7 years of my life. Why did I? And he just said, I just knew you would do it.
No, it was actually
Yeah,
because I read the original, because you would do the job. Close enough, but because you would do the job. That was so clear to her, she was already doing it. So the pragmatism of her relationship with the voice Jesus, the pragmatism that went on between them was perfectly orchestrated, designed for her personality. And that always gets me too. We have the voice within as equally as she did. And it's always tailor-made for us, for what we've made of an ego into the persona that we think we are.
And one more thing that I really find fascinating, Judy, is that her decision to put it down but not to practice it, not to do, not even to know that it works, but not to believe that it works, as she so brilliantly confessed. I think that gives us the permission, the free pass to be ourselves, to not feel guilty about our, dents, or, like that we're not perfect, to just feel okay about that. I think that's also beautiful. I mean, if she had been this holy priestess, guru-like, enlightened, blah, 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 we might have even been turned off and said, oh, we're never going to reach that. But being the way she was a perfect example for us to not be perfect and feel okay about it.
I love that, Armand. I'm so glad that you said that and that you know it, because there are a lot of questions of confusion. How come? If this is helpful that she didn't get it, well, she didn't choose to. But you're absolutely right. I could say from a very, very selfish point of view, if she had been what you described, let's say an enlightened soul, or even good way towards it, I would have run like heck, and there would have been someone else who published the course. And maybe that would be just as good and fine, but that isn't the way it turned out, because she was, in a sense, she was welcoming, because she wasn't off-putting. And I didn't feel as if we had a chasm of unconquered space between us.
Mm-hmm.
It was very down to earth and busy days with Helen. Ken Wapnick had the challenge of trying to find her a pair of green pantyhose. And she had just bought an outfit that demanded green pantyhose. And he went to 7 or 8 different stores and therefore was late to our meeting one day. And he looked it was a hot, hot New York day. And he looked very out of sorts, flushed and really uncomfortable. And she walked in with a perturbed look on her face because they did not accomplish that mission. But what I learned from that was not about green pantyhose, that they don't carry them in New York City. What I learned from that Ken Wapnick was the perfect person to be there and selflessly serve Helen. That there was something so holy in watching this kind of service at you can say the penultimate level, making sure she had her boiling water with lemon, because she didn't drink tea and she didn't drink coffee, but she did drink boiling water with lemon. And as soon as we came together, it usually is at our place in New York City, Ken went in the kitchen and got her that. It was just, he read her to sleep at night when she couldn't sleep. And I said, what kind of books are you reading her? He says, only one book I read her that'll put her to sleep, and it's the course. She says, yeah, I had a few sentences and I conk out.
So he got used to people falling asleep while he was teaching, right?
I think he probably did. Yes. But
just kidding. Just kidding.
as one of the great American prophets called Edgar Casey said, if you want to learn something, put it in a book, put it under your pillow at night and sleep on it. So I guess in our sleep, we do much more than sleep. Oh dear. Well, there's something.
May I just go back to that, just to continue that that story of you kind of knowing, not having any idea about how to, but that you did know that you would do your job, your part of the bargain, so to speak, publishing it, and having gotten that answer after 41 years, the roadmap home. How did it continue?
Well, it continued in this way. It was so natural that I find recreating it in my mind is stilted. But I left there that day, their office at Columbia University Hospital, and I had the 7 binders.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in my car, and I was going down Broadway, pretty heavy traffic, and I just pulled into a spot that was empty by a telephone booth. There were no cell phones in those days, and I called Jerry Jampolsky. And he was with the patient, and I said, tell the patient to wait. I have something to tell you. And I didn't tell him the story, but I said, have I got something for you? And I said, I want to read you something. And I read him just a couple of sentences, also from the teacher's manual, because that was the thinnest of all the binders.
Yeah.
He said, it was unlike Jerry, his answer. He would usually say, yeah, I'm with the patient now. But he said, when can you get here? I was in New York City. He was in California. And I said, I can't come before 2 weeks. He said, make it next weekend. And I said, okay, I will. So this hadn't even really been discussed. So the way that I knew, he knew.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back on it, he said that we were the first students of A Course in Miracles. Helen and Bill were both teaching us or treating us, and sometimes because they were very good therapists. And because we were in a relationship with each other, which was extremely unbalanced and I would say disturbed, and we wanted to get out of it, they had the opportunity to teach us what holiness was. That is such a bizarre statement. I've never made that in my life. And I don't believe it. That's what Cherry said. However, I think more it was like we were in pain and suffering, but we were very, very good friends. We just didn't get along. Very similar to Helen and Bill. You could say they were excellent friends, but they just didn't get along. And I think somehow or other, Jerry and I intuited that their helping us was helping them. So there was no talk about publishing. We didn't even think about, they weren't thinking about publishing. It was only next step that here was a new person in the group of 3, and now there was a group of 4, and every day we're going to read the course and hang out together. And so we started that every day, 5 days a week. And I'm with Bill. I was with Bill on Saturday also. We just were together. We went through the workbook. We went through reading of the course. Of course, I had many, many questions. And again, in retrospect, I had 3 superb teachers. It was Ken, who was there all the time, Ken Wapnick, Bill, and Helen. Ken was still learning from Helen, but he was 2.5 years ahead of me. So you could say he was a graduate student. I was kindergarten, but we were still in the same schoolroom. And it was that more than anything else that we were doing. And because I was teaching at the time at New York University, and I was asked to do other talks in other places, I asked them, was I allowed to not tell the story that we've shared just now, but to mention that there was a document that came in this unusual way and that I thought it was of high value. Could I do that? And they said yes. So I was indeed telling my classes and other people, well, of course they wanted to see it. Of course they did. And at that time, I had a doctoral thesis advisor, Eleanor Criswell. Dr. Criswell was at Sonoma State University. And she said, you know, I could run them off at Kinko's, which was a place that they reproduced manuscripts, and I could bind them for you in these small volumes because this is much too heavy to carry around, and then you could share it with people. So that's what we did. With Helen and Bill's permission, we ran off copies, offset of the manuscript, and I did 100 copies, and they were in 4 books each, so it's actually 400 books, but only 100 copies. And then people were allowed, who certainly came forward, and let's say they were qualified for it. We didn't announce it or advertise it. And the 100 went so fast that we had to print up another 100. And that went fast, another. This is only within 3 months. So within 3 months' time, there were 300 copies of this little, call it reduced size manuscript in paperback form. And at that point, we realized we really have to publish it. And of course, realizing it meant asking. And we always, every single day, we got into the habit of asking on everything, no matter how trite or minute the issue was. You could say it was a practice like the Olympics of the mind, so that we did it all the time. And we asked, should this be published in a hardcover, real book? And the answer was absolutely. And then came the process of being open to the various publishers, professional publishers who had heard about it. And they would meet in our living room in New York City with Helen and Bill and Ken and me, and we would talk about how they would publish this. Well, almost everyone that came forward wanted to shorten it, of course, or put it 3 books and just publish the workbook and forget about the text. And it just didn't, you know, they seemed like perfectly lovely people, but that wasn't what the guidance was. The guidance was to keep it together. It was indeed a course, and you don't separate parts of it. So we were sitting around one day after we had met with yet another group, not professional publishers, but really loving the course and having published other spiritually relevant books. And we got that we asked the question, are they the one? No, they're not the one either. And finally, in despair, we said, is it supposed to be published? This was the 4th time we asked. And the answer was yes. So we said, well, who is supposed to do it? You're giving us direction on everything. Who is supposed to do this? And the answer came this way. Only those who will be dedicated to this the rest of their lives and nothing else. Only those who will do it in a not-for-profit environment. Only those who will agree to make copies available to people who cannot afford them. And only those who will treat it with dignity and respect. So we're looking around and we said, where are we going to find people like that? And all of a sudden, the 4 of us started to laugh. Said, are we supposed to do it? Bill got the inner answer because he always got funny answers, thought you'd never ask. And Helen got a clear yes, and Ken got a yes, and I got, oh my God. But that was my own. And then we started to say, you know, should it be in a hardcover? Absolutely. Should it be in 3 books? Yes. The first thing we got, yes, it should be in 3 books. And then I knew that none of us had funds to publish this. So I was worried about that already. And I said, where is the money supposed to come from? This is asking the voice, Jesus, where is the money supposed to come from? And Helen got, she didn't know. And Ken got that I would know. And Bill got, it is already available. And what I got blew me away. Make the commitment first.
Oh my God.
And that was Valentine's evening, 1976.
You know, this is, I'm sorry that I interrupt a little.
No, go ahead.
Oh God, this is so important. I mean, you could take this and put it into um, you know, I'm lacking the word right now here, but put it into life stories of so many people. We always think, we first there needs to be the proof,
Right.
and then we can commit.
Yeah.
That's how it goes so many times. I mean, so many people ask me, can I afford to live my real purpose, my real talent, my real calling? And I tend to answer, well, can we afford that you don't? So it's this economic hassles. It's such a pain, but actually it's pretty simple, and you just gave the answer. Make the commitment first.
It was so simple, Oman, and I know that anyone who lives his or her life according to the world's rules that we've all made up would know that you don't spend what you don't have.
Sure.
This is just the opposite. This is you make the commitment, and then it can unfold, because you're not in charge to begin with, ever. And when we heard that, well, I heard that, we all put our answers together and we said, okay, so be it. So we made the commitment and everyone went home. And the next morning, I was just getting up. It was about 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and the telephone rang. And I answered it, and a voice said to me, hello, Judy, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Reed Erickson, and I run the Reed Erickson Educational Fund. And I said, yes, I met you 2 times, and Dr. Stanley Krippner had introduced me to you before, and you came to my house once. And he said, that's right. Well, I want to tell you that one of those little books made its way to Mexico. I have 4 of them, the whole set of A Course in Miracles. The president of my foundation is a friend of yours, and she brought me a copy. And this is what I've been waiting for all my life. I'm 67 years old, and I've been to India, and I've been to Nepal, and I've studied Buddhism. And he said, this is really what I've been waiting for. And you can't have it in these little flimsy books and give it out. You've got to publish it. It's got to be in a dignity, the word he used was dignity too, in a dignified form. And I said, you have no idea how right you are. And I told him about the guidance. I said, the only problem is you run a not-for-profit. I run a not-for-profit. You know how hard it is to raise funds. He said, Judy, I don't have a problem raising funds. I have the funds. And I just was guided last week to sell a piece of land and to send you the money. And the check is in the mail, and you should receive it in a day or two for $60,000.
Oh my God.
$60,000 in 1976 was
like a million now, right?
Well, at least 10 times. I would say at least 10 times. So, excuse me. It was, it was part of the plan. It was so obviously part of the plan. And that day when Helen and Bill and Ken came over, I said, we have the funds and we'll go. And we just, I love to think of this story, the whole story. It's like Mickey Mouse, so overly simplified because it was simple. I'd gotten the yellow pages in Manhattan. I looked up popularly in printers. Where do I find a printer for this? And how do we do this? And so we, step by step, we taught ourselves with lots of mistakes, and we printed out the first set of 3 books. Was published June 22nd, 1976. So that was barely 4 months after we got the word. And it was out. And now when the time came to give the printer the amount of copies we wanted, I didn't have any idea. So we did what we always did. First, I said to Helen, how many copies do you think we should publish? She said 4. I said 4,000? 4. 1 for him, 1 for him, 1 for me, and 1 for you. 4. And the funny thing is she really meant it.
That would be 15,000 a copy.
And then we asked. So I didn't get any number, and sometimes Ken, I don't remember what he got, but Helen certainly didn't get any number, but Bill got very clearly 5,000. And since Bill was always good at numbers, whenever we were asking, it seemed that the number part would always come through Bill best. So we gave the order for 5,000. I thought, oh my God, I'm going to have those books in the middle of my living room for probably 20 years. But they were gone in a few months.
Wow.
An article was written in a magazine called New Realities. James Boland wanted very much, he's already studying the course, and he was the publisher editor of that magazine. And he wanted Helen and Bill to give an interview, and they wouldn't. They did not want their names connected with it. So they made me the fall guy. So they said, you do it. So I did this interview, and he published it with someone, another journalist's article about the course called Simple, Dumb, Boring Truths, A Course in Miracles. Simple, Dumb, Boring Truths. And within just months, we were wiped out of 5,000. And that was the very beginning, you know, of the work that we did to get the course to the public. And as I said, it was so simple, you would think that Walt Disney had scripted it.
Oh my God. I can just repeat myself, Judy. I think many people out there are most grateful that you did that you followed your guidance, that you gave the commitment, and that you remember this so beautifully to tell us just now today. It's really something. Thank you.
I am more than happy to share it because it's the joy of my life. And you know this just as well as I do or anyone else, Norman. If this stuff didn't work, why bother? But the fact that I can say happily 43 years and still going, my life has changed so dramatically that I think I finally touched the little girl who wanted to go home and know that she's well on her way.
Yeah. Yeah, it works. Sometimes we resist, and that's a big one, you know, amongst course students, it's a big thing inside of us. And I know that feeling all too well. But you know you should, you know you could, but you don't want to. Just like Helen, I guess, you know.
Yes, of course.
And at the same time, you know, you just can't, you can't deny it. It just works.
No, you can put it aside. You do. Jerry Jampolsky likes to tell the story on me, of course, that we were on his deck and his house was built right over the water in San Francisco Bay. I mean, actually in the water on pilings. Beautiful location. We were on his deck and we were studying the course together at one point, and I just picked up the text and I threw it in the bay. I didn't want to see if it would sink or swim. I was so angry. I was furious, and I couldn't wait to get rid of this. And one might ask, you know, boy, you know, that's pretty profligate of you to throw a book away. But remember, I had more, so I wasn't worried I'd be without the text. I didn't think about it. I want to get this off my lap right now. Yeah, I think this goes on all through our study because, well, we designed the ego to resist. That's the whole purpose of it. And for us to think because we read something, we study something, we pray somewhat, we try to remember its concepts, we really, with all our hearts and minds, say, I would like to be able to live a life free of conflict. I would like to know what continuous peace is. I would like to have loving relationships. I would like to know my source. All of those, the ego just is going to have a field day. And to recognize that that is part of the whole process, that instead of getting angry at ourselves and throwing the book in the bay or stuffing pages down the toilet, I once did that too, we're going to eventually start to have 2 or 3 steps under us on the ladder we're climbing. And we're going to realize we are actually getting off the ground of the ego. We are actually able at times to stop our negative projections and ask ourselves, choose. Do we want this? Choose again. And the time frame gets shorter and shorter. My husband Whit once asked Bill Thetford, because he had been a professor himself and he liked measurements and exams, of course. So he once asked Bill Thetford, how do you know how you're doing with this course? How can you tell? What kind of measurement? There are many answers to that. But Bill just looked at him with his eyes twinkling and he said, well, depends upon how long you hold a grievance.
Mm. Very simple.
Very, very simple. So you can look at your grievances as they come up all day long and see, I recognize that's a grievance. Do I want to hold that? Sometimes the answer is yes, but mostly it gets to be no, in which case it's gone quicker and quicker and quicker until perhaps you come to the place, and I'm sure many people do, and certainly I know I have, where I can stop myself before the thought is half formed. Do I want to think that about this person? No, he is myself.
Yeah. I'm doing it to myself.
Yeah.
Mm.
All that I do to myself.
Yeah.
We're talking about removing the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. That couldn't be anything more simple than that. You think of a little child who's just built a big wall of blocks, literally blocks. And he or she is your own little child, and he or she is hiding behind it. And what you have to do is get to him. You don't want to scare him by throwing the whole thing down, so you remove the blocks one at a time, and there is the presence of love sitting in front of you.
Yeah. I started doing workbook with my group again, and just 2 weeks ago, and we're at lesson 23 today, and when I did it, I immediately realized, oh my God, there are many attack thoughts in my mind. And but I didn't feel guilt about it. It was more like an observation, like, wow, so many. And the ones that I was really prone to dismiss as, that's not that important, that's not that grave, yes, it is. And every one of them is it's a block. If you those exact blocks that we're talking about, one of these thoughts can block everything. And I thought, wow, this is a real net or a real swarm of attack thoughts that I've been entertaining. And I'm so glad I can really look at them now and realize, oh my God, I can really, escape this world of pain and suffering.
Yeah, what we put up are the blocks of the barriers to communication. And the Course says healing and communication are synonymous. So what happens when we do not observe that thought and we put up a barrier by thinking something negative and judgmental about someone, how in the world can we communicate with them? We remove ourselves by thinking it in a different way. We've removed the barriers, and then communication and the healing of the separation, which was never there to begin with, the healing of the separation is possible.
Mm.
Good stuff.
Absolutely. Wow. So that's how the Course came into our lives, and thanks to you, well remembered the whole story. Again, I'm very grateful. Yeah, so wow, that was a quick hour, Judy.
Is it an hour already? We're just getting started, Armin. Want to do another hour?
Well, you know what? I got a feeling we should maybe repeat this and have nice storytelling conversations about, so much more, maybe. What do you think?
I'd love to. I find, I used to be, how can I put this? I used to be embarrassed or shamed by the fact that I live to tell stories. That's my way of communicating. And I think, well, that doesn't sound very intellectual or high-minded.
Or
And then
spiritual.
exactly. And someone, when I said this to someone someday, she said, yeah, well, I sort of heard about someone else who told stories too.
Mm.
I stop and think, well, I guess so. People do respond to hearing other examples of themselves.
I think stories and metaphors and analogies, it's giving the student, quote unquote, the possibility to get it in their own time and to get it in their own way, in their own manner, to get it, to understand.
Yeah, they're very definitely a teaching tool. And also, I find when we tell each other our stories in person or through various means of communication, our hearts get touched.
Yeah.
So that we feel moved and open to love.
Hmm.
And I think that to me is probably one of the greatest values of telling each other our tales.
Yeah. Well, I have a nice analogy that I just told Maureen Muldoon the other day. But I used to go to Spain a lot, like Granada, as a matter of fact. I had friends there. They had a language school. I just loved Granada in the southern part in Andalusia. And people ask me, well, why do you keep going there? I mean, you could go to Asia or America. Why do you always go to Spain? And I said, well, you could say it's the landscapes, the mountains, or it's the food or the wine or the culture, the architecture. It's so beautiful. Everything's so beautiful down there. But basically, for me, it was always the people. I love the Spanish. I love them. They're so outgoing and they love life and they're always in the streets. I mean, even if those bars are really small, but people are in the streets taking their drinks there and talking and smoking and whatever. And I just love to be there and get involved with them. And yeah, and that's the same thing with the course. I love the people who do the course. It's like you connect immediately and every one of them knows exactly what you're talking about. And they also know what you've gone through because they looked at their own stuff and they know exactly, not exactly, I mean, they don't know what you experienced, but they know how it feels to go through all that shit. To this through this despair and this doubt and fear and guilt. And I just love the people who do the course. It's like it already feels like a community to me, and I can meet every day. I can meet new people who do the course, and that's what this conference is for people to meet. And I do the course because of the people as well,
Well, I think the whole idea of what you've conceived here, it seems to me there's no question in my mind we're listening to the same voice because the time is right. It's just ready for it. And I was remarking the other day that what my favorite thing to do. Someone said, what do you do for fun? And I brought her into my office and I turned the computer screen to what I wanted to show her. And I showed her something that had come in that morning in the email. And it was about 80 or 90 Chinese people singing me a song because Shaolin Kaban, who was the translator and teacher all through Chinese speaking worlds, was there for a few weeks, and they decided they wanted to say thank you about the course. And so they decided to sing me a song. Every time I watch it, the tears are pouring down my face. There's so much joy there, Oman. I want to go and hug them. And they're putting out their arms like they're going to hug me. And I'm going to send it to you. This is only the tip of the iceberg. I have thousands and thousands of photographs of groups meeting and individuals all over the world with either the course in their hand or meeting in meditation or something like that. And I don't travel anymore at all. I don't need to. I watch these people and they're all my siblings.
Yeah.
And I am theirs.
Yeah.
But there's something so marvelous about this kind of process, which you have originated and are bringing together, that I have the feeling it's the beginning of something that's going to continue.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. And I'm so grateful for being part of it, you know.
Well, you're doing exactly what you're given to do and enjoying it at the same time. I don't say we don't have issues that arise and ordinary world things that we have to deal with, and certainly logistically with what you're doing, there have to be blips here and there. But what I'm talking about really is just the continuation of the joining, communicating and healing, communicating and healing. And it thrills me. I said, what a perfect time for me to be old. I don't have to move, and I have everything I could possibly want in these kinds of connections.
Yeah.
And it enlarges your scope and enlarges your outreach, and in friendship, it just fills you up completely. So it's a remarkable thing that's happening right now, this November, and what you're doing. And we're going to be talking about it for years to come, I know.
Wow.
I have something I wanted to ask you.
Of course.
You'll call it. Before we sign off, can we just say a prayer for your dad together? He's been on my mind so much.
Of course.
Should we do that now?
Yes.
Okay. Silent, or do you want to say something? Whatever.
I think I'm going to say something. Yeah.
What's your dad's name?
Werner.
Okay.
I'm just going to call him Papa, the way I always did. Papa, ich bin dir so dankbar. Oh, I forgot that. Maybe I should speak English. Oh, God.
No, you should speak German.
Papa, ich bin dir so dankbar. Du hast so viel für mich getan. Und jetzt gehst du. Und ich weiß genau, dass es nur dein Körper ist, der da geht und den du loslässt. Und trotzdem bin ich traurig. Ich habe diese zwei Seiten in mir. Oh.
Holy instant would we give to you, be you in charge, for we would follow you, certain that your direction gives us peace. We thank you for bringing the Son into the world, who is helping to join us all in the name of Jesus. We thank you for giving him the life that you gave him, the love that you gave him. the opportunities that you gave him so he could pass on your eternal love to all of us. And we can be in that love this moment as you are taking your leave of your physical body to progress into your next step. We join you in your leaving, surround you with the love of God. We know that you know it all already. And we thank you once again from the bottom of our hearts. Amen.
Amen. Oh, Judy, thank you so much. I could really feel a liberation. Oh, man. Well, this is not the exact way I figured an interview would end.
Well, it's not an interview, it's to be continued.
I very much hope so, Judy. I would love to.
I'll get my teeth in and my eyes.
And then, do you think we can use a camera then the next time,
Yes,
or maybe
course,
whenever you're ready? Okay.
Yeah, it's not vanity per se. It's Helen. I'm absolutely serious. Helen was saying to me, the thought of Helen, of course, me, when you go out there, remember who you're representing. She would tell me what clothes I should wear, and what she threw away a pair of shoes of mine that were really high, spiky heels because it didn't look good on the stage. So I had to honor my spiritual mama. I gotta get my teeth in. See, I never had teeth out before. It's very exciting to me. It's, you know, life is full of laughter and tears. It's full of everything that we can possibly experience. What good is the dream? Well, we obviously are making the best use of the dream that we can. And I think we only touch the tip of the iceberg in knowledge. We have really no idea. We know who knows, and that's enough. We'll stick with who knows. But at the same time, honoring each other in his name, I cannot imagine anything more important that we do. And not at this moment, but sometime soon, I will tell you that my requesting of you that we join in love of your dad was not just for you.
Thank you, Judy, for everything. And,
you are a lovely man.
Oh.
No wonder Efrat loved you.
Oh, don't start with Efrat. Oh my God.
My darling Efrat.
Oh my God.
I hear from her 2-3 times a day. There isn't a day that goes by I don't hear from her.
Really? Oh God.
Yeah.
I love her. I just love her.
She is quite, and you know, the wonderful part about all of this is, I know someone could say that about me, and probably has. And I could think of a few people who did, but I've known her for so long, and she was such a beautiful child when I met her. But boy, is she a grown power woman now.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Jerry.
Yeah.
You know, the Jerry I see today and meet with every Thursday is not the Jerry I met 47 years ago. Definitely not. Now people say, well, do anyone you know ever finish the course? First of all, I don't think the course is ever to be finished, not by us. We're promised God himself takes the final step. We just go as far as we can until we are really living in the happy dream. And the rest, you know, this is totally on faith.
Yeah.
Completely. And the faith is with a capital F because it's so strong and supportive. But having witnessed the people in your life who have been studying the course for a long time and knowing how different they are for themselves, Bill Thetford tippy-toed as high as his 6'2" height would give him, with his arms in the air the night before he died, and said, I'm free, I'm finally free.
Yeah.
I am finally free. And I knew, I knew what that meant. I knew the process he had done. I knew up until like the week before he died, he was calling people and saying to them, I know what forgiveness is now. And for anything I have ever done or said to you that was uncomfortable, I regret it, but we are one and in this together. And I forgive myself for ever having seen it, ever having thought that I did. And they knew exactly what he was talking about. So everyone has his own process, and we're told, would mine be Bill's? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. But everyone is different as the little droplets of sun when you see them by themselves and they're all coming from the same source.
Yep.
Watching each other be and grow and do what it is we're doing in the framework of the spiritual concept, and in this particular one called the Course in Miracles. I can't imagine a more fantastic way of dreaming until we awaken.
Thank you, Judy, for...
Let me know how it goes with your dad. And just, I know you know everything. You know it all, just to be thinking peace, but I'm going to be joining you with that too.
Thank you. You have a wonderful rest of your day. And
I started beautifully. So.
yeah, we meet again, Judy, and thank you for your time, and thank you from our listeners in this case today, not viewers, just listeners, but it was just as entertaining and
well,
enlightening as it could have been. Thank you.
And I thank you too. It's circular. The song of prayer. The song of prayer is always circular. Bye, my dear.
Okay, bye-bye.